What do we read into this Morgan Stanley hire?
Well, remember that Goldman Sachs is also advising Elon Musk. So Elon now has sort of the top two investment banks in his corner as he, gets ready to, I guess, put forward an actual proposal to the board, which no one has seen yet. So, there's a lot of different factions now. There's Musk himself, who is the CEO, chairman, and largest shareholder. There's Tesla, the company. There's Tesla's board of directors. And then there's the special committee of the board that has been assembled to kind of evaluate any real proposal from Musk if and when he puts one forward. So what's happening now is that you've got PR firms, lawyers, banks, all kind of like lining up to get a piece of the action, because no matter which way this goes, there's money to be made on all sides.
Right, absolutely. Fees to be made no matter what happens. What are actual next steps we should expect to see in this very unexpected scenario?
Well, we have not seen any kind of real proposal from Elon Musk about his go private plan and who the funders are. I mean, he tweeted about it. He wrote a blog post, but that's like very different from, perhaps a detailed financial plan that Tesla would then maybe issue an 8K about. I mean, he's got to put forward a real plan. Obviously, I think he's brought in bankers to help him write one. But I mean, that would be the next obvious step, a real plan. And everyone keeps asking, why hasn't the board hired a bank? Well, I mean, they're probably talking to banks, but there's nothing to evaluate yet. I mean, there's no real proposal yet. So that's really what everyone is waiting for. And, in the interim, I mean, there's not a lot of hard news right now. There's just a lot of speculation. And, the next step is a real proposal from Musk.
So how long could we expect this process to take, no matter what the endpoint is?
I mean, he can sort of do this on whatever timeline he sees fit, right? I mean, at one point there was, some rumor that they want to get this done quickly before they have to report third quarter earnings. But what is the rush? I mean, the stock is kind of remarkably resilient in terms of share price. Some investors don't want him to go private. There's a lot of questions about how it'll happen, but I imagine that it could go quite slowly. I mean, there's not like a timeline on it. I mean, this is basically his company and he can do whatever he wants.
Now, talk to us a little bit about what we know about the SEC inquiries. We had a former SEC attorney on earlier this week who said it's pretty clear from her perspective that there are multiple investigations going on into Tesla, given how quickly the SEC has moved. That's now an outside observer's perspective. But what do we know about the progress and the enforcement that the SEC could take here?
Well, I think that, my understanding is that, the SEC, when they investigate a company, they often have simultaneous inquiries or investigations going on about more than one thing. So as our reporters in Washington figured out, there was one, the SEC was already sort of looking at Tesla and at company statements. Then the tweet happened, and that kind of spurred them to look more closely. I don't know whether those two things have converged or whether they're still on separate tracks. But, apparently subpoenas have been issued. We don't know which executives have been interviewed, but there were interviews that were supposed to happen this week. And, Tesla is a big target for an agency like the SEC. And so it's kind of like, if you come at the king, you best not miss, right? So I think that I imagine that they're still investigating. I just don't know the scope and what else they could be looking at as they uncover things.
Dana, most of the analysts we have talked to say there's zero chance of this going private thing actually happening. Have you talked to anyone else who says otherwise, who says, actually, yes, this is a very realistic option. Here is how?
It's really hard to say. I guess I would just recall that when, Musk proposed buying SolarCity, everyone thought that that was bananas and would never happen. And it ultimately passed with 85% of shareholders saying yes. So it really is a question of Tesla's IR team and what big investors does he have in his pocket. If he, can flip some big shareholders and convince some of his personal friends to go along with him. There might be a way to do it. SpaceX seems to be the template of what he would like to do. I just think the question is also, what are the limits of the big shareholders in terms of their ability to actually go private? But he's a very determined guy, and now that he has sort of made his intentions public, there will be huge egg on his face if he can't pull it off. So I think he's lined up Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley to help him figure this out and to line up the investors that would need to make it happen.
And have you spoken to any current Tesla employees about how they feel about this? Are they upset that they could lose their flexibility around liquidity?
I think people just want to know, what does it mean for them in terms of their stock options? You have RSUs, you have options, they vest in certain tranches. How is that going to change? But SpaceX is a very popular program too, where SpaceX employees do have options that trade on the secondary market, and they're able to sell them during different liquidity events. So I don't think people are like in a panic about it. I just think that the whole go private timeline is up in the air, and people want to know what it's going to mean for them. For Tesla employees, stock compensation is a big part of their overall package, and the Bay Area is a really expensive place to live, so they just want to know, what's going to happen with that.